Hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Pete, and on this series we're going to be discovering the Farnley Branch line. That runs from the Leeds-Dewsbury main line and also where the Leeds new line used to go to Farnley, and Farnley had an engine shed, and that's where we're going to end up at the end of this series. But that line has brought me on a bit of a journey, and it's been a hell of a research mission, and I hope to share some of that with you and show you the amount of research that does go into making some of these videos, because this one has been extremely complicated. It's still incomplete, so if there are stories that you know, please write them in the comments on the video, not on Facebook or anywhere like that, but on the video. Hit the thumbs up button and press subscribe. It is completely free. This series is probably going to run for 3 or 4 episodes. I'll see how I can condense it down. But what you're looking at behind me there is a hedgerow. It wasn't always a hedgerow. Apparently that used to be a tank, a sifting tank for a mine that used to be there behind me. That was called Cottages Springs lift shaft. Now, I've been speaking to a local, and I've got permission to be everywhere that you're going to see on this episode. So I'd like to say thank you, Phil, for letting me on your land and showing me around and telling me some information about the place. But that quarry there behind us had a light railway going towards it, and it used to run at the other side of that, what is ultimately a square, but I will go up there and I will point the camera back down and show you it. And it used to run along that hedgerow there, a light railway. And there is a small piece of that rail left, and Phil, the landowner, has been kind enough to show me it, and I videoed that, so stay tuned for that one and I'll show you that. Now, these were all part of the Farnley iron and clay works that own a number of pits around here. Through my research, they own at least 15 pits that I know of. Now, that company started in 1844, and I suspect these pits are much older than that. And most of the pits on this part of the line that we're going to be looking at were closed by about 1913. But before then, it's always been mining country, this part of Farnley, Leeds. And they used to create what was called bell pits, and we're going to go into what is left of Farnley wood, which used to cover all this behind me here. I'll put up an old map so you can just see how much of this woodland has gone. And I've been quite fortunate to be able to gain access to the last bit of Farnley wood that exists today. It's ever such a small section, and it is virtually covered in oak trees. It's an old oak wood, what this used to be. Of course, this would have all been harvested for the oak, probably for the mines that are around here. There used to be a row of cottages just in front of me there now. I'll turn the camera around and show you what's there now. They've all gone. There were 19 cottages at this site, and there are some photographs of them from about 1965, and they are quite derelict at that point. They were built in 1850 to 1855 with a number of rows of cottages to house the workers for the Farnley clay works and these mines that were out here. So we'll turn the camera around and I'll show you what's there today. We'll go to the maps now, and what I'm hoping to cover in this series is the Farnley Branch line, which, if you watch the cursor, you can see this triangle here. This line here was originally opened as the Leeds and Dewsbury line, and also running close to that was the Leeds new line, which joined onto here. But for us, we're interested in what's in there when we get there. This railway line that runs along here, across Whitehall Road, and into this area here, which is now a modern industrial estate, but it wasn't. That used to be the Farnley Iron and Fire Clay Works, which we'll go into when we reach there. But this railway line was standard gauge, and it ended about there. Now, the Fire Clay Works owned its own railway, which was narrow gauge, and that consisted of loads of sheds and things around here, railway lines, and that railway line ran through Farnley, which is through there, across top of Lawns Lane. It would have gone through this estate, round the back there. I'm going to zoom it in a little bit, and you can see in the land that line that follows the railway that used to be there and into this field. This farm wasn't here, but this used to be called Soden's Pit. It was a mine for coal and ironstone, and that used to run across through there, down this edge, and then it would turn here across this road here, Lowmore Lane, and then it would come across back across Whitehall Road along the side of the cemetery. And I'll just centralise this a bit more so we can see. This, you can see clear as day, is an embankment, and we get as far as here on this episode. We'll go to this junction. Down here there used to be Briggs Pit. Again, that was another one that was doing coal and ironstone, possibly in disuse by 1913. So this is how long ago we're talking, but clear as day. Look, you've got this going through here. Now this all used to be embankment. It's all been levelled out, and there, all levelled out, and in this field it's gone, and we walk up this lane here to meet the railway there at that point here. This is still an embankment. There's a bit of a drain there, and then it used to turn off up here to a day pit that was there, and then it also used to carry straight on here and turn to there. Now I'll zoom that in a little bit closer. There used to be a row of houses here that we're going to go see. This square here used to be apparently a filtration tank, and there was a pit here, Cottingley Springs Pit, and apparently this used to have 9 shafts. Now all this area is covered in historical mines, but we'll have a look at these cottages that used to be here shortly. Now just before we go to the mines, going back to the side-by-side map here, we can see the triangle on the right, which is the modern day view, and the one on the left is what used to be there. When we get there we'll see that this bridge is still intact, and that'll be our marker point of where we can line things up with old photographs. And it's this line here, look, the London and North Western Railway. This line opened in 1846, and it was built to serve the old clay works, well, Farnley Iron Works as it's marked there, but it predominantly did bricks, and it did bricks for all over the world, which we'll discuss when we get there. Now you can see all the railway line and the embankment still here. The railway line is not, I should say, sorry, but you can see how busy this place is with railways. And when we get there I'm going to be discussing some of the locomotives that used to run this line, and I've managed to find out a few, and I've even got a photograph of one, bearing in mind this area will have closed down in the 50s, I think 1956, and it opened in 1844. But going back to our light railway where we're starting off, this is where I believe engine sheds are, and we've got a pond here. The light railway with the siding there came all the way down through the housing estate as mentioned, round through there, round through Soden's Pit, just moving along, and you can see on the old map on the left the actual route, and we can see it on the map on the right, the modern day view, where it scarred the land. This is our line here that we're along today, and we get as far as this point here. So going back, notice old coal pit, old coal pit, old coal pit. Just look how many old coal pits there were. Now there's a piece of railway that goes up there as well to this mine here, which was known as a day mine, and apparently that had, this is quite a valley to see, and this had a mine shaft that went in through the side of the hill. Now there is virtually nothing left of this railway. We'll go down there, and this is where we are. This is where we're starting at this point here. The old Farnley Wood lift pit, as mentioned earlier, had like 9 shafts on there at one time. Now it's a travellers' camp. But we can see here that the marking is there of that square. We can see here a row of cottages, Cottingley Springs. They no longer exist. They are on the left map, but we have got some photographs there. Again, old pit, and we get to go in this wood here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom it out, and I'm going to bring up a map that's pre-1840, I believe, that shows us this as a wooded area. Now there are air shafts and pits everywhere here, and if you look at the map on the right, where my cursor is, these little dots everywhere are entrances to what was called a bell pit, and they're also in the wood. So I'll just pull up an older map. Here we are. I've pulled up the older map on the left, and I've zoomed it out quite a bit. Now if you look on the right, this is the area where the cottages are, and the pit and the railway used to end. Now if you look on the left, you can see the size of Farnley Wood. This is huge, and all that is left is just this little outcrop here. If you look on the right map, you'll see it. Look on the left, you can see how small that section is and how large it was. Farnley Wood became known for the Farnley Wood plot, where some parliamentarians gathered together, 26 of them in all, who plotted to take over the Royalists in Leeds. This is in 1663, after Cromwell and after the reinstated King Charles II. Now it was a failed plot. Nothing ever happened other than a meeting in the wood. They were found out, they were all gathered up, and they were all taken and executed. 23 were executed in York, 3 were executed in Northallerton, some were even hung, drawn and quartered. And there are some horrifically violent pictures of the day depicting that. So what I wanted to do is just zoom this in for you a little bit, because even when this was a wood, we can see old coal pits, old coal pits, old coal pits everywhere, dotting this. Right in this surviving bit of woodland here, we do have evidence of bell pits, coal mining. This is long before the technology existed to do, never mind open mine casting, but deep shaft mining. And we go into this field. If you look on the right, we go into this field here, we've got some dark dots. These are old bell pits, and you can see the beige ones in these fields here really clear, and occasionally these sink down. Now the gentleman from this farm came out and spoke to me. He was kind enough to show me around and showed me a lot of things to the land and what's left. And there is a building there on the right hand map that remains of the cottages, which we will be looking at. So that being the site of Cottingley Spring Pit, this being the tank, the railway line going along there, and we can rejoin it up there a little bit. It's quite a foggy day today. This is our row of cottages that was here. Now that pit did employ somewhere around 90 men that I've found. And these cottages, as I've found out, were destroyed in about 1966, no later than probably 1967. And they were called Cottingley Spring Cottages, or Cottingley Springs. This area does have a spring, hence its name, which feeds some ponds here, some fishing ponds, and I believe they are good fishing. So if you're a fisherman and you want some good fishing, There are a couple of ponds here, so you probably need to come and inquire about them. Now this is the end of the cottages, and then through that fence there is what's left of all these buildings that were here. Now those toilets are quite modern for these fishing ponds, but I was informed that those are actually tapped into the sewerage works, or the sewerage pipes, for what these rows of cottages were. So they did have sewerage facilities. Now we have got permission, we will be going on the other side of this fence. That is the remains of Cottingley Wood, where there was a number of bell pits, which I'll explain what those are when we're going through there. But that brick building, which we are going to go and see, is the remains of stables that are related to the cottages and probably the mines that were in this area. But for now, we're going to be heading off in a moment. As you look around those lands there, you can see how uneven they are. And here, these are all pits, bell pits that were dug out, and which over the years have been filled in, of course, when they were disused. But every now and again they collapse, so they have to fill them in again, and the mounds are what's left of what was dug out of those pits. So what we're looking at here is the remains of stables that were attached to Cottingley Springs, which were here. That up there is the remains of Farnley Wood, and we're going to go up there in a moment and I'll show you what there is left up there of the coal industry. What we are looking at here is inside those stables. There's the original hay rack that we're looking at here. There is a hoop on the front of that trough. Those troughs will be made out of Farnley clay. They are glazed. There's one of the hoops there, look. I couldn't see any maker's marks on it. You can see how dusty it is. But yeah, they're made out of Farnley clay, and this is all that remains of Cottingley Springs cottages. After looking at the Cottingley cottages, we'll move across into Farnley Wood, where there is evidence of ancient mining going on with bell pits. I'll put some pictures up showing you what a bell pit is. A bell pit is a primitive method of mining coal, iron ore, or other minerals lying quite close to the surface. A shaft is sunk to reach the mineral, which is excavated by miners, transported to the surface by a winch, and removed by means of bucket, much like a well. The bottom of the shaft is enlarged and a sloping roof is created as the desired mineral and surrounding rock is removed, as you can see in these pictures, giving its name as a bell pit because its cross section resembles a bell. Typically they weren't mined with supports, and they just went until they started collapsing, until they were too dangerous to mine, and then they would backfill them. But all the spoil would be left on the surface pretty much, and that is poor quality soil mixed with coal and whatever rock came out with that. As you can see, I've just shown you a bit of soil here. It is terrible for growing anything, and if you notice the trees, they are growing in such a way because they get poor footings and roots that the trees basically grow any way they can. At Farnley we can see where some of these bell mines were, because the tops have now sunk down, which I am showing you in this video. But also in different areas of Leeds, these mines also ended up being converted into open cast mining, and there is a picture there where you can see that there's been a shaft sunk, the bell at the bottom, and where it's been converted to open cast, so you can actually see what was going on. And as we look across the land in this last little bit of video of the mining, we can see all the undulations, which are very unnatural, and they are created by spoil heaps from the sheer amount of bell mines that were in this area. Next we'll move on and we'll continue on with the railway. When I got to Cottingley Springs, the owner of the land, I got speaking to him, and he mentioned he had a piece of narrow gauge rail from the railway because the railway used to cross his land. When it was ripped up, they clearly didn't take everything away, because what we're looking at now is probably the only piece left of Farnley Iron Clay Works narrow gauge railway. I was never expecting to see anything like that on here. It's absolutely amazing this still survives. We'll continue along the line and we'll see what else we can find. So leaving Cottingley Springs behind us, which is along this row here, the line continued on through this field. We're not walking through there. It has been completely levelled out. There are no traces, unless you look at satellite images, of the line that ran through there, which would bend to the right heading up to Whitehall Road, but there was also a spare going straight down just over that brow into Briggs mine. Turn the camera around a moment. This is looking back to Cottingley Springs. Cottingley Springs mine was just down there slightly, but there was also a spare off up into the fields over there. But these lines were forever changing and being modified, because these quarries, oh sorry, these mines didn't last long. They soon basically exhausted what's in there. But we're lucky enough to see on this field it's not been taken down. This is actually an embankment. And we can see it's fairly flat from there, but it's mounded up here with a pile of rubble, probably from what these were, where they've gone through the stone wall to access the field as well. But if I go to the other side, there's a drainage ditch, but we can also clearly see an embankment, and that ran here. There is a public footpath up there, but we're not going to go up there because we need to go right round the other side and start coming down from Whitehall Road and picking up from where we can get to. But the track ran through here, eventually caving off up to Whitehall Road, and that's where we're going to pick up, where I can get close to what was Briggs mine. So we've come further along the line from that bit direction there to what is the first main junction of this light railway. There's really not a lot here to say that it was here, but there is on the other side of that camera there. But down there behind me, I'll turn the camera around. So that was behind me. That would go straight on, and this is the actual track bed, which would have gone down there, and then it would have also turned left here as well. Not quite there, but here, down that hedgerow, and that would have been going off to Cottingley Springs, which was down that way. Now this was a narrow gauge electric railway, so that probably means that it had electric engines on it, small ones, might have been 2 foot. Somebody who's seen that piece of rail, maybe an expert, can identify it and help write in the comments on what that was. But down there was what's called Farnley Branch, and that was a mine down there. Now there's nothing left of it. It had a shaft, and it's now a piece of wasteland where somebody parks the cars. It's all private land. I did try and walk down, but there are horses loose on the road down there, and I don't want to alarm any stock or any cattle or anything like that. We're not here to create any sort of problems for anybody, so we'll stay well away. But that mine down there employed 125 men in 1896, and again a few years later, like 20 years later on the maps, it's abandoned, it's disused. So the chances are this track was probably taken up as well. But having said that, this company owned at least 15 mines, and I know 12 of those were in this very area around me. They're not open cast like you think of mines today, or even huge underground mine shafts like you would think of back in the day. They were quite small, following the seams. But the railway went up this way, and this is our real evidence now of a railway line was here, because we're going onto an embankment. I will show you that embankment, oops, if I don't fall over. I'm absolutely covered in mud today, so once we get to the top of here, we're going to call it a day for this video. So top of here is Whitehall Road, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you down there. We can see clearly this is an embankment now. You'd have never built this for cars and tractors and whatnot, because you don't need it. Railways did. And then we've got the embankment at that side as well. Now you can see how foggy it is today and murky. That is pretty much how the research has gone for this railway line, because it was so long ago. Cameras were barely invented, so people couldn't afford them unless you're wealthy. Now the family that built this railway originally, the Armitage family, were wealthy, and they lived in Farnley Hall, which we'll go into in another episode. But they have photographs of their hall. Why would they take places of their places of work, or where they exploited their workers? There you can see the embankment there, and it's getting higher and higher. I would say it probably doesn't go much more than 10 or 15 feet at its highest. That's been chipped away there for a bit of a footpath. And next our crossing is at Whitehall Road. So this is our crossing at Whitehall Road. It never had any gates on it. It's believed that this is an original post, but it's gone at that side. The reason it had no gates on is because this was mainly shut down by the time traffic became a thing. You've got to remember, the traffic on this road would have been horse and carts. It is a busy road now. I'm going to cross the road because there is one thing left of this crossing to show you that there was something substantial here, and it's this gate post here that is associated with this line, and it would run straight through that field there, across Moor Lane into Soden's Pit, and we will cover that in the next episode. Now I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please hit like, share and subscribe. Lots more to come on this line, lots of interesting things too, so I hope you'll join me for those in the future. Take care.